Democrats continue to stall funding for the border wall, causing a potential government shutdown. A Chinese tech executive has been arrested, causing the stock markets to plummet. Lastly, California is planning to use taxpayer dollars to fund illegal immigrants' health insurance. This is A Better World, and I'm your host, Luis Acevedo. Starting off today, we're going to talk about the potential government shutdown that may occur. However, Congress has just averted it, being that they passed a short-term bill to push the deadline to actually fund the government. So I'll go ahead and read the article that covered this in Reuters, and it is titled, Congress Approves Short-Term Spending Bill to Avert Government Shutdown. The U.S. Congress on Thursday approved a 2-week stopgap spending bill to avert a government shutdown, setting up a potential showdown over President Donald Trump's proposed border wall later this week. Without action by Congress, funding for several federal agencies, including the Department of Agriculture, State Department, and Department of Homeland Security, had been set to expire this week. The stopgap bill extends funding through December 21st. Before the stopgap bill expires, the Republican-led Congress is expected to consider a $450 billion bill to fund the departments through the fiscal year that ends next September 30th. Trump has demanded $5 billion this year as part of his plan to build a wall on the border with Mexico that Democrats argue would be ineffective at keeping out illegal immigrants and illicit drugs. Instead, Democrats want to continue improving less costly fencing and employing high-tech instruments to detect illegal border crossing. They have argued to include $1.6 billion for additional border security. Let me be clear. The $1.6 billion cannot be used to construct any part of President Trump's 30-foot concrete border wall. It can only be used for fencing, using technology currently deployed at the border, and only where the experts say fencing is appropriate and makes sense, Senator Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said on Tuesday. Trump has threatened to force a partial government shutdown if Congress does not give him the money he wants to fund the wall. This is what's going on right now in Congress, and this is the same battle President Trump has been fighting since he has been inaugurated in office, at least one of the battles he's been fighting. The thing is that Democrats have had an opportunity to make deals with President Trump that would be in their favor of what they say they believe in, yet they don't follow through once President Trump says, okay, I will give you what you want if you give me what I want. There's no compromise for the Democrats. And I think I know why the Democrats do not want to compromise on the border wall and don't want him to be able to fulfill that campaign promise. The reason why is because that's one of his biggest campaign promises, and the very reason, in most part, why he got elected, because people are upset that wages are going down, that they're stagnant, although they are on the rise now with him in office, which is a good thing. Anyway, the middle-class American was struggling for a long time and still is sort of struggling. And part of that is due to illegal immigration and immigration as a whole, because what happens is wages start to devalue as unskilled workers come into the workforce and take low-level jobs, and companies start paying less money. And that helps the wealthy elite that are both on the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. That's why for a while you saw Republicans actively wanting an open border as well as the Democrats. So this isn't something where it's exclusive to the Democrats. Now it is. With Trump's leadership, it is exclusive to the Democrats because Republicans are becoming more hardened on securing the border. So they don't want President Trump to fulfill his campaign promises because that would greatly affect his chances of being reelected. Although the economy is doing well and people are employed at the highest rates that we've seen in a long time, if not ever, and wages are going up. Those are beautiful things that are happening under President Trump, and things are actually getting done under him, which is another thing that's probably scary to a lot of the Democrats and established Republicans as well, because Washington is usually pretty ineffective. And I think for good measure, because the system works to their favor in a lot of ways. So I really think this is just a straight political tactic. It has nothing to do with morals. It has, because if it did, I mean, really, if they actually cared about it in a moral sense, they would be understanding to the fact that it is morally right to protect the people that you lead, as opposed to helping other people who are under your nation or under your leadership. Not saying that we shouldn't help them, but we should be top priority to the leaders in our nation as opposed to illegal immigrants. So I really think the Democrats are doing this all for political reason. It's plain as day, because a while ago, President Trump even offered to give them DACA if they funded the border wall, and they denied that. So this is a straight political move to try and hurt Trump's chances of being reelected, because for the most part, people are happy with what President Trump is doing. So that's what's going on right now. We'll see exactly how this unfolds as time goes on, and hopefully we don't have to go to a government shutdown. I mean, if we do, we do, whatever. I mean, it is what it is, right? Hopefully President Trump can get what he wants out of it, which is the border wall, which is a pretty important thing, not only to his campaign, but also for the country. It will help prevent illegal immigration, although illegal immigration has gone down and has been going down since Barack Obama. And if I'm not mistaken, Barack Obama has deported more people under his leadership than any other president prior. So it's not as if President Trump is the anomaly in this case. Barack Obama did pretty well on enforcing deportation. However, he started loosening the regulations when it came to people here illegally and allowing them to stay, and not cracking down on that as much as President Trump has. So that's the clear distinction between the two leaders, which I would take the latter, President Trump, over President Obama any day when it came to that. So when it comes to that. So we'll see how this goes as the process unfolds. There could be a partial government shutdown, and if there is a shutdown, I think it's fair to say that it will be the Democrats' fault. Now, in other news, the stock market has plummeted, and that's due to a Chinese tech executive being arrested on December 1st. So the Dow drops 430 points. This is from the AP this morning. And what happened is on December 1st, so I believe that's the first day the G20 summit was going on, and the G20 summit, as you will remember, is where President Trump and President Xi came to a ceasefire agreement and ended the trade war for 90 days. Well, with the arrest of this Chinese tech executive, it has sparked more tension between the two nations and a little fear amongst investors, obviously, being that the stock market has plummeted by 430 points on the Dow. They have started reinvesting in other things that are more safe. So China is probably going to have a measured response to this, being that President Trump has all the leverage when it comes to this trade deal. That is plain to see, as we've covered numerous times. President Trump has all the power when it comes to negotiating with China. And the reason this tech executive was arrested is because we have an administration who is going to enforce the rule of law. This company was giving and doing business with countries that we have sanctioned and do not want U.S. technology to go to. For example, Iran is one of those countries. Syria is one of those countries. And this company, Huawei, I believe is how you would say it, they were going against what we told them not to do, and sanctions that we have strictly in place to prevent that from happening. And to add a little more fuel to the fire, these Chinese tech companies actively spy on their users, and they are ran by the communist government in most part. The people who are on the board are probably working with the government, and I say probably because I don't know for sure, although I am almost 100% certain, being that they're a communist country, so you can't have any private companies in a communist state. It doesn't work that way. Although they may present the illusion, it doesn't work that way. So They had another company, ZTE, which was banned from doing any business in the United States due to that reason, or merging with AT&T because of that reason. This company, actually, Huawei, looked like it was going to try to do the same thing. This is a quote that I'm reading from the New York Times in the article titled, "Huawei CFO is arrested in Canada for extradition to the U.S." And this is a quote from Senator Ben Sass. He states the following: "China had been working to creatively undermine our national security interests, and the United States and our allies can't sit on the sidelines." He added that Americans are grateful that our Canadian partners have arrested the chief financial officer of a giant Chinese telecom company for breaking U.S. sanctions against Iran. Now, it's important to note that Canada, Great Britain, Japan, Australia, I've actually done an episode on this, but there's a lot of other countries who are very upset at China and their horrible practices of spying and stealing technology and blueprints to companies who want to do business over there, which is the main reason President Trump started this trade war, to stop China from doing what they're doing. Now, the Canadians have arrested her, bringing them back to the United States to face punishment. We'll see exactly what the Chinese government is going to do, if they're going to retaliate in any kind of way. I don't think they will. I could be wrong on that, but we'll see how that unfolds. Now, this was from a professor of Hofstra University Law School. He wrote the following: U.S. prohibits exports of certain U.S. origin technologies to certain countries, he said. When Huawei pays to license certain U.S. tech, it promises not to export certain countries like Iran, so it is not unreasonable for the United States to punish Huawei for flaunting this U.S. law. So pretty much anybody who has actually looked at this case is in agreement that they should be punished, and I think this is a very smart move on President Trump's part, the administration's part as a whole, to enforce this. John Bolton, actually, the National Security Advisor, was aware that this was taking place on December 1st. It is unknown if President Trump knew this was taking place too. There's some talk about that being that President Trump and President Xi met over the weekend at the G20 summit and came to an agreement over a ceasefire. And the speculation is, will this impact the truce negatively in any kind of way about the trade war? I don't think it will. Like I said, I think President Trump has pretty much all the leverage in this case. Now, going on to something else that's still tied into this is that AP also reported earlier this morning that record imports drive U.S. trade deficit to $55.5 billion in October, highest in decade. This, to me, at first looked pretty. It didn't look like good news, right? When you hear any kind of deficit increasing, it doesn't sound good. And I will be the first one to admit, I'm not an expert by any means when it comes to the economy. I am not that informed when it comes to certain things about the economy either. However, there was a comment in the Twitter section from a verified Yale professor, it looks like. He's also a Democrat. His name is Howard Foreman, and he states the following regarding this article written by the AP. This is a reflection of a strong U.S. economy, domestic demand, and weakening global economy, global demand. But it can be spun in more negative ways, mostly because POTUS, certainly not mainstream GOP, has demonized trade deficits. That's from a Democrat. That's not from a Trump supporter. Maybe he's a Trump supporter, I'm not sure, but that's from a Democrat. And he's an economist from Yale. I'm not really one for, bringing out titles and trying to do those sort of things. But I think it's important to acknowledge that an expert in that field is stating this isn't that big of a deal. This is actually a good sign. So I do believe this has a lot to do with the trade war that President Trump and China were in. I mean, the U.S. and China were in. But like I said, I'm no expert on the economy. And we'll see how China's going to react to the arrest of the CFO as time goes by. I'm pretty sure they'll come back with a response shortly. They've actually already responded to it, saying that it's a lie and that everything they're being accused of is inaccurate, although they said the same thing about stealing IP, intellectual property, and then they completely contradicted themselves, saying, yep, we will work on it, we'll do better at not stealing intellectual property, and we'll actually start implementing laws. That way people who are doing it will be punished. So yeah, you can't trust what the Chinese government says. They're extremely corrupt, only want power, and only out for themselves. So we'll see if they're going to respond in any forceful way against the United States because of this. And we'll also see how the CFO will be prosecuted. And before I switch over to the last topic, I want to add that we should all be very mindful that this isn't an unlikely scenario that China is actively trying to spy on us with our technology and is more of a threat than Russia. Just look at the past instances that have happened over the past couple of months with them spying on aviation companies, stealing information from them. The past decade, they've stole information from our military, power infrastructure, so many other things. There were signs that they were going to meddle or had the intention to meddle in our midterm election, although we haven't heard anything really about that. But from the FBI director and the Homeland Security Secretary both stated that China is a bigger concern and threat than Russia when it comes to interfering in our election. However, we just keep hearing about Russia, 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 when really the concern should be with China. I think the concern's not with China because they have a lot of power right now globally. I talk about this quite a bit. I have few episodes, as I've stated numerous times, purely dedicated to China and what they're doing to the world. It wouldn't be far-fetched to say that they are trying to really conquer the world. They are stealing information from all the other countries who are not with them. So if you're not communist, they're spying on you probably. And even if you are, they're still spying on you. That way they can try to work on getting leverage over you and making you submissive to them and compliant. So what's going on in California resembles a little bit of communism, socialism, because the California Democrats plan to extend Medicaid to illegal immigrants. And this is an article from the Washington Examiner. And it states the following. A California lawmaker has pledged to reintroduce a bill that would allow adults who live in the state legally to receive medical care paid for by the government. The state assembly member, a Democrat and a doctor, announced the plans Monday as the legislation convened at the state capitol, according to the Los Angeles Times. Should the bill advance, California will become the first state to extend Medicaid coverage regardless of immigration status. State projects for last year's bill State projects for last year's bill found that 1.8 million people in California are uninsured and reside there illegally. If they reside there illegally, why in the hell are they still in your state? First off, why are they here? They should go through the process. Why are they still illegal? Why haven't they begun the legalization process? Seriously. Anyway, getting back to the article. So roughly 1.2 million would qualify for Medi-Cal, the name of the state's Medicaid program. The legislation is being introduced ahead of a new governor entering office, Governor-elect Gavin Newsom. Initially, had vowed to seek a single-payer healthcare system for the state, but tampered down his rhetoric later in the campaign, focusing instead on extending coverage to the uninsured. Single-payer refers to a one source of payment for all medical services, usually the government, which is a complete and utterly stupid plan. Why? Well, the government will then decide what you get for medical care. They get to decide. So it's going to be a one-size-fit-all when healthcare is not a one-size-fit-all. We have our own individual needs, which is another reason why we should not have state-funded healthcare plans. It will not work. It will just bankrupt the country, and it will provide inadequate service, healthcare, to those who need it most. I digress. So the Democrat who introduced a similar bill last session alongside State Senator Ricardo Lara, but the final version would have covered fewer people than they had both originally envisioned. They were narrowed to young people between the ages of 19 and 26 and to immigrants over the age of 65. Outgoing Democratic Governor Jerry Brown refused to fund the provision in the state budget. The latest plan would carry an estimated price tag of $3 billion a year, according to California's Legislative Analysis Office, which would be paid for by the state's general fund. Medicaid is otherwise jointly funded by state and federal governments. Critics have questioned whether people in the U.S. illegally would move to California to receive health care benefits, which would increase state spending. Under a Medicaid provision in Obamacare, anyone making less than roughly $17,000 a year qualifies for insurance. That provision, however, doesn't apply to people who are in the states illegally. Emergency departments provide medical care for people regardless of immigration status. California has already extended Medicaid to people younger than 19 who are in the state illegally. California is actively trying to destroy their own state. That is what they're doing. They already have outrageous prices for people in the top 10 to top 1% tax bracket, which has been proven to actually bring in less money. Why? Well, that's very simple. If you make a lot of money and you're being punished for making a lot of money, and there's an option for you to leave that state and go somewhere else where you can keep more of your money and invest more of your money, wouldn't you do that? That's exactly what people are going to start doing in California if they actually allow for this bill to go through. They're going to lose a majority of their state. San Francisco is already losing, or at least 60% of their residents want to leave because of socialist policies like this. The Democratic government is ruining their state. And it's a sad thing. It's very sad that, if I'm not mistaken, the last time California had a really good economy is when Ronald Reagan was governor. That seems to be the pattern, is Republicans build up the economy, Democrats tear it down. Now, some of you may say, well, it's not exactly true. When taxes go up, revenue goes down. Because under Bill Clinton's administration, the tax brackets went up and he brought in government revenue. Well, that's true. The difference and the thing that needs to be acknowledged is that he lowered the taxes on capital gains, which provided incentives for people to invest. Wealthy people, who are the primary investors and who pay the bulk of taxes. And I really think that it's wrong on so many levels that taxpayers are going to be funding illegal immigrants' health care. That's not our job. That's not, no. And they already have it going on for people younger than 19 years old. And for those who say that illegal immigrants don't get any benefits, you are ignorant to the truth. What happens is that illegal immigrants can come over here, have a child, that child then becomes a United States citizen, and that is their gateway ticket to getting all the social benefits they want. Also, with the emergency medical care, who pays for that? The taxpayers. And California is just going to be flooded with a bunch of illegal immigrants milking off of the system. That's what's going to happen. California is going to slowly die off if they actually pass this. We'll see. Hopefully not. Hopefully Californians can wake up and realize what they're doing is killing their state. They are. That's the news for today. I hope you all enjoyed it. Hope you all are having a wonderful Thursday, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Peace.